Good morning, afternoon, evening, middle of the night, LAPC scholars. Mr. Raleigh here. So today we're going to do the second part of the road to disunion. In other words, the road or events leading up to the American Civil War. All right, so the Dred Scott case. So Dred Scott was a slave who belonged to John Emerson, an Army soldier, surgeon assigned to a post in Missouri when the Army transferred Emerson from the state to Missouri from the state of Missouri to the free state of Illinois. He took Scott with him as a servant. The pair then moved to Wisconsin Territory, an area where the Missouri Compromise expressly forbade slavery. In other words, slavery was illegal. When Emerson died, Scott returned to Missouri, where he was placed under the authority of his former master's wife. Helped by abolitionists, Scott sued for his freedom. He contended that living in a free state, in a free territory, made him a free man. But there were some legal questions here. Did Dred Scott have a right to bring his case to the federal courts? Scott only has that right if he were a citizen of the United States. Did Dred Scott become a free man by living in a free state and in a free territory? If yes, this would limit slavery, since most slave owners would not risk taking their human property to a free state. Did Congress have the authority to prohibit slavery in the territories? If not, then the Missouri Compromise restriction on slavery in the territories was unconstitutional. So what was the decision that the Supreme Court of the United States had? Led by Chief Justice Robert B. Taney, the Supreme Court ruled that neither slaves nor free blacks were citizens in the political community created by the Constitution. Remember the Three-Fifths Compromise? Taney declared that slaves were chattel property, so far inferior that they have no rights which the white man is bound to respect. Since Dred Scott was not a citizen, he was not entitled to sue in federal court. The court emphatically ruled that Scott did not become free by living in a free state or free territory. The court ruled that as a constitutionally protected form of property, slaves could be taken into any state or territory. The Dred Scott decision therefore declared the Missouri Compromise to be unconstitutional. This marked the first time the Supreme Court struck down an act of Congress since the Marbury versus Madison decision of 1803. What are the consequences? The Dred Scott decision repealed or took away the Missouri Compromise, therefore establishing the principle that Congress cannot limit the spread of slavery in the territories. Or the spread of slavery in the territories was the big question. The Dred Scott decision invalidated the Republican Party's platform to pledge opposing the extension of slavery into the territories. In other words, it made it that it just was worthless. Although this initially appeared to be a serious setback, Republicans redoubled their efforts to win the presidency. They promised that a victory would enable them to change the composition of the Southern-dominated Supreme Court and reverse the Dred Scott decision. Dred Scott decision played a key role in the Senate debates between Stephen A. Douglas and his Republican rival Abraham Lincoln. During the debate, Freeport in Illinois, Lincoln asked Douglas if there was any way the people of the territory could keep slavery from their land before they organized into a state, and what became to be called the Freeport Doctrine. Douglas responded that the settlers could prevent slavery by refusing to pass a slave code defining a slave's legal status and the rights of the owner. The Freeport Doctrine outraged the South and cost Douglas political support he would need in the 1860 election. The consequences of John Brown's raid on Harper Ferry. John Brown's doomed raid on Harper's Ferry in 1859 set off a wave of fear throughout the slaveholding South, as rumors of slave insurrection swept across the region. Frightened Southerners suppressed all criticism of slavery. Pro-slavery Southerners incorrectly linked John Brown to the now hated Black Republican Party. Although his raid was a military failure, John Brown became a martyr for his anti-slavery cause. John Brown's raid on Harper's Ferry intensified sectional bitterness and left the nation on the brink of disunion or civil war. The election of 1860. The Democratic Party fragmented into two factions. The Northern Democrats nominated Stephen A. Douglas on a platform of promising congressional non-interference with slavery. So in other words, not touching it, not going anywhere now. Deep South Democrats nominated John C. Breckinridge on a platform of calling for a national slave code that protects slavery in the territories. Now, these two different Democrats made it so that they had to share all the Democratic votes, which made it possible for the Republicans met in Chicago sensed that an excellent opportunity to defeat the now divided Democrats. The Lincoln-Douglas debates transformed Abraham Lincoln into a nationally known figure. The Republicans nominated Lincoln on a third ballot, which meant that, as I said, the Democratic ticket was split in two. The Republican platform said that slavery would continue to be protected in the states where it already existed. However, the Republican Party firmly opposed the expansion of slavery in Western territory. So no one here was saying, oh, we're going to get rid of slavery. We're just going to, some people wanted to keep it the way it is. Some people wanted to change it, but nobody wanted to get rid of it exactly, at least not openly. Lincoln won the election by carrying all 18 free states, and he did not win a single state in the South. Because the Democrats were divided, he was able to have enough of a majority. In fact, he barely had a majority. Like he had like just over a third of the votes, but because of the mathematics between him versus the two Democratic candidates, he won. The failure of compromise. Lincoln's victory precipitated or caused the secession of South Carolina and 6 other states in the Deep South. Secession means basically to leave. So leaving the United States of America. In a final desperate effort to save the Union, Senator John Crittenden of Kentucky proposed to restore the boundary line between slave and free states established by the Missouri Compromise of 1820. This line would be extended to include the new territories in the West. They would just keep going. So it's going here, and then it would just keep going all the way west. Okay? Lincoln refused to support the Crittenden Compromise because it violated the Republican position against the further extension of slavery into the Western territories. So this heated atmosphere of distrust allowed those who refused to compromise in both the North and the South oppose all efforts to achieve a compromise. In other words, by this point, nobody was willing to compromise anymore. The nation continued on a road to disunion that cannot be stopped and a bloody civil war. So there you have it. At the end of this, you have an exit ticket. Make sure you are doing you're making your notes and sending them to me. If you have any questions, make sure you email or come into Zoom. All right, so thank you very much. And next week, we're actually going to talk about the Civil War itself.